A lot of people were questioning, we're getting another Batman film here, like, is this too much, superhero overload? I mean, at this point we know, DC has been kind of hit or miss on their films recently. I mean, and with the whole Zack Snyder era over, the question kind of was, what's the next step? Where is this gonna go from here? Is this just gonna fizzle out? But at the same time, everybody knew, like, they bought all these IPs. Warner Brothers has to compete with Disney and Marvel and all that, so you knew they weren't just gonna drop the superhero films altogether. So, when they said they were going to do a new Batman, what's interesting about this movie, though, was that this was originally supposed to be a solo film for Ben Affleck's Batman in the Zack Snyder universe. And this was supposed to be directed by Ben Affleck. I don't know if you remember that, but this was supposed to be like Ben Affleck Batman's solo film, and it was going to be written and directed by Ben Affleck. And again, watching this movie, that was just kind of going through my head of, like, what could this have been had it been that, and was this like kind of, yeah, that was like kind of the thing after, like, the Justice League and all that this was going to be like Ben Affleck's, solo film. And I really like Ben Affleck as a director. So I was like, this is going to be interesting to see what he does with this. But obviously it never panned out, and the whole Snyderverse just kind of fell apart. But I guess we can kind of give a little quick spoiler-free review before we get into the actual spoilers of the film, and just kind of talk about, what we liked and what we didn't like. And, we were talking about this earlier before we started, that basically, this whole film, was another one of these films, just like No Time to Die, which we talked about a couple months ago. This was another one of those films that was supposed to come out in 2019 and was obviously pushed back, and then pushed back even further because of the pandemic. And, well, here we are in 2022, and we finally got it. So yeah, I mean, kind of give, I'll let you take the floor here and kind of give your spoiler-free thoughts, and then we'll do that for a few minutes and then dig into the actual meat and potatoes of the film. But yeah, just kind of a broad overview. What are your thoughts? I mean, how are you feeling about this?
I was feeling good. I remember I texted TJ. I was like, TJ, I'm getting excited. I was riding the train to the theater, mainly because of anticipation. Of course, when this is the seventh Batman that we've seen on film. Of course, I think the last one being Ben Affleck, we deserved a new one, and I think we got a good one. Being kind of from the trailers, we were going to see it was going to be a lot darker. I don't know about you, TJ, but probably got a big feel, like thinking about like the Arkham video games, from the fighting to the visuals to almost everything. I mean, it was beautiful to watch at times because there was a lot of darkness, a lot of lighting was definitely a key factor Reeves wanted to use in this movie, and just constantly being at awe of like what we were seeing, but also just being like, this is a Batman we've never really seen before, besides maybe even out of like the cartoon version of Batman's, like the Caped Crusader and stuff, like the darker versions of the Batman that we've seen. This is definitely something new, and I think a lot of people really were looking forward to it. I mean, I was in a packed theater.
Yeah, so was I.
Yeah, so definitely, a needed movie. I don't know if you got that DC, trailer in the beginning of your film. Did you?
Oh yeah, yes I did. Yes, where they basically promoted all. This is
DC. DC's. It might be the new era of DC. You came off, I think, Justice League. We had the Zack Snyder cut. We got new Aquaman. We got a Flash movie. This Batman movie. What was the other? Oh, and Black Adam. So I think DC and Warner Brothers, they're putting their chips on the table, and so far so good.
Yeah, I agree, man. And I think, kind of building off your point of this was a Batman we had never seen before, you're exactly right. I think this film really leaned into Batman being the world's greatest detective. This was more of a crime film than a superhero film. I think I was thinking a lot that, Matt Reeves, this film was written and directed. This was written by Matt Reeves and Peter Craig and directed by Matt Reeves. And Matt Reeves obviously was responsible for doing the Planet of the Apes films. The two other ones, Dawn of Planet of the Apes and War of the Planet of the Apes, the last two of the trilogy. He did both those films and really took it in a really dark, heavy direction. As the first film really leaned in more of the sci-fi, he really kind of took it to the next level and made them almost like dark, heavy war films. But so I was really excited to kind of see his take on this. And I think you're right. It was a very different film. It was very much more of a crime film. This movie was more so than like an actual superhero Batman film. And I think that was what a lot of people wanted to see, was more of a detective Batman, because we didn't really get to see a lot of that, obviously in the Burton films and in the Schumacher films, and then obviously not even in the Nolan films. I mean, really the only detective moments that Batman had was the whole plot with the bullet in The Dark Knight, with the bullet in the wall. Yeah. And really he just used his own technology to kind of figure it out, more so than
still doesn't add up either, like taking a brick and making a new bullet.
Yeah, it's kind of ridiculous too, but like that was really like the closest you got to seeing Batman actually be a detective. So like in this film, it really leans into that. And I think Matt Reeves, the director, he definitely watched a lot of David Fincher films, I think, before he made this for sure and wrote this, because like this movie has Seven, Zodiac, Girl with the Dragon Tattoo. Those films are written all over this, and you can totally see the inspiration there, from the dark, like you said, the dark, gloomy, dreary vibes and the way it's shot, with the rain and the darkness. It's very much inspired by David Fincher films. So it was interesting, and I did like this film a lot. I mean, I do think it dragged on a little too hard, and I think in the third act this film just kind of, I think it's overstayed its welcome, really, once you got to the third act. But I thought the first and second act of this film were fantastic, and the story was very interesting and very well done, and had a lot to say in it. And that's really something I really appreciated, because, I was expecting that this could potentially just be kind of a gloomy mess, like this film easily could have been just like very like sappy and like Bruce Wayne just wallowing and feeling guilty for being rich, and it really isn't like that, because that's kind of how the trailers kind of were portraying this to be. But it very much had a lot to say, and I like how like they don't really tell an origin story here, and I'm not going to get too much into spoilers obviously yet, but like they don't really tell an origin story here. It's more so that they just tie the origin story that everybody knows and weave it into the story that they're trying to tell. And I thought that was so smart.
It was well done. I was kind of one of my things I was worried about too, but just going off that, like, are they going to start from scratch? Are they going to start in the middle? Like that's always, an aspect. Like we saw with Ben Affleck, a good snippet of, the murder of the parents. This, we didn't see it at all. We just kind of could feel the of course, anger, hate, and everything that, builds up the birth of the Batman. And you could feel it, the tones, the darkness. Like you said, Zodiac signs, any crime scene that we saw was riddled with stuff like that. And you could feel, like, you felt the city was bad. Like, I was personally like, this would be a horrible place to live.
Yeah.
So.
No, I agree. And it's like, I think it was really interesting in that way, because, like you said, you definitely can feel how, like, dark the whole atmosphere of Gotham City is. It's a very different Gotham than obviously what we see in the Nolan trilogy, which is really the only thing I can compare this to, because I think it does take a little bit from The Dark Knight, and we'll talk about that towards the end of when we get into spoilers here in a minute. But like, just kind of wrapping up my spoiler-free thoughts, man, I really recommend people see this. If you're a Batman fan, I think you'll appreciate what Matt Reeves was trying to do here. And I don't think he disrespects this character whatsoever. I think my problems with this film kind of rely on some of the other characters that are presented. Mainly Selena Kyle. I think her motivations were just a little bit muddied at times, and she just kind of, it just didn't seem justified with some of the things she tried to do, and we'll talk about it. But like, that was something that I kind of wish was, and I think her portrayal, like, I like Zoe Kravitz in the role. I think she's good, but like, I just think that the way the character's written just doesn't really feel like Catwoman. It just feels like this character could have been something, another character, and it still would have made sense. It just didn't feel like a Selena Kyle type character. And I'll kind of get more into detail with that as, we get into spoilers, but just kind of wrapping up. I recommend people see it. I really like this film, and it has, it has good action, like you said, and I think a lot of that, the fight sequences were inspired by Batman Arkham Asylum and the Arkham series. And after playing, obviously, I did a playthrough of Arkham Asylum with the patents and skin mod. So, I definitely kind of got that vibe as I was watching. I'm like, man, that kind of looked like what I was playing It kind of looked like that. And I liked the way that the action was directed. And there's a great chase sequence in this film as well that I really enjoyed. And like I said, I just think the film I think it overstays its welcome. I think the first 2 acts of this movie are great. And then the third act, it just kind of devolves into a generic superhero film by the end. And you're just kind of like, okay, this just doesn't, it kind of tonally goes out the door in that way. And I wish it would have been a little bit more contained. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And it got a little too grandiose for its own good. And I guess it kind of felt like it had to.
Yeah. I had a feeling it was coming to an end. And I'm like, oh, they just did something so cheesy with the kind of the hero ending of it. But I think it was awesome. Like you said, going off it, definitely recommend. It's another version of a Batman. If you're already a fan, you're definitely going to like it. You're definitely going to get your money's worth.
Right.
And of course, with this, version of Batman, of course, what they always do with it is make different relationships, from Alfred to Catwoman, to Commissioner Gordon or Lieutenant Gordon.
Yeah.
We see another take on all those relationships, and it plays off well. And a little bit more history. You get some familiar names, the Falcones.
Who are briefly mentioned in Batman Begins. They're kind of like an afterthought to kind of set up Bruce Wayne. But in this film, Falcone is like a huge player. Just kind of wrapping up our thoughts. Yeah, I think you should go see it. And, I really enjoyed it. So let's get into spoilers.